So chat, basically yesterday did the ranking every Jedi. Then currently my camera is trying to ignore. So we're going to be doing ranking every what best Sith from best to worst or whatever the fuck. Basically ranking the big boy Sith people. Also, I feel like this is kind of very loaded because surely it's the guy from fucking the Old Republic, not Revan and Malik or whatever, and not whoever the second game had. Can't even remember that. The person was supposed to be the perfect example of a Sith Lord or whatever, or the most powerful Sith or whatever the fuck that you find in information in the MMORPG stuff. But either way, if they pick Darth Vader pretty high up, that's pretty fucked. He embodied the ideals, don't get me wrong, but homie still killed big bad evil guy. But anyway, that's enough digressing. Let's see if we even know half these fucking people, not like yesterday when everyone's from a show from 1,000 years ago.
Sith are? And no, Kylo Ren doesn't count.
I agree. I don't think he counts character. Arliss. That is who I was thinking. That is the Kotar Treya. Treya.
She's a cool Sith assassin and everything, but she ends up working for the light side eventually. You just...
Also, I don't know if she's really a Sith. Isn't she just like a assassin more than a Sith, if that makes sense? They would have broken the rule of two because there was another apprentice at the time. Okay, finish was Dooku's apprentice, not Palpatine, I think. Once again, series and stuff I didn't watch.
Can't do that as a Sith. In the same vein, the next Sith on my list is Darth Vader. Before you rush to the comments to flame me, hear me out.
No, I 100% agree. Yes, he embodied everything that it's supposed to be, and yes, he suffered in pain. I mean, like, to feel the hatred in his life, but motherfucker ended the Sith. He literally he ended the Sith. He does not get a count as pretty high up on a list of best Sith when he stopped them.
First of all,
even if it was by accident, I mean, Hitler, you can argue that Hitler was like fucking the hero of the war. Hitler killed Hitler. He stopped himself. Kinda can't be considered the best fucking mastermind in a world takeover if the homie killed himself.
Essentially,
or ended what he was trying to start. Very bad analogy on that, but hey, here we go.
Pawn for his entire life. He couldn't grow in power because of his suit, so he never had a chance of overthrowing his master.
I don't know about that one. Unless it states it somewhere in some of the legend stuff or extended universe stuff now, I suppose. That said that his suit held him back. Yes, he wasn't a perfect example of a human, of like a healthy human in fairness, but I don't think there's anything that says his suit held his power back or restrained him.
He was stuck doing Sidious's bidding. Secondly, I want to bring up the Sith code here. The final line of the code says, "Through victory, my chains are broken." Vader was pretty much the embodiment of someone wrapped up in their chains. He was fueled...
Okay, that is fair. That one's 100% fair. I will give him that.
By regrets from his past life as Anakin, knowing he could never achieve the victory he wanted. And as we find out, the only way Vader could break free of those chains was to turn back to the light side. Vader was...
Don't know if he necessarily broke free of those chains and ever came to terms with what he did, but it was him trying to make amends for it. I think saying it broke him free and he became happy with who he was, I think is a bit of a stretch. Like, yes, I know there's the bullshit with the Force Ghost thing, but I think the whole thing was that he was trying to make amends and it was the least he could do to try to right his wrongs, but doesn't mean the motherfucker was right.
Was one of the only Sith who was completely redeemed and turned back to the light.
I feel like that's still a stretch, but sure.
Sith stays dedicated to the dark side of the Force. So I guess now is a good time for me.
That part I agree with. I do agree with putting him very low on this list. That I 100% agree with. Reasoning may be slightly different, but literally fucking ended the Sith. Homie does not get to be high up on the list of Sith. Best Sith when I ended them, I stopped them.
To explain how I'm ranking these Sith. This isn't entirely a weakest to strongest list, although I am trying to take that into account. This is about the best and the worst Sith. The best...
That, I think, is also an important distinction. Is not just power scaling, but also who embodied what the Sith were meant to be. And I feel like in that, given that was like a lot of the video we watched yesterday, where, I won't spoil it in case people haven't watched it, but where they picked who number one was, definitely was not the strongest.
Best Sith are those that live out what it means to be a Sith to the fullest extent. That means that they are truly tapped into the dark side. They are driven by selfishness and ambition for power above all else. I'll focus on three main things: their power, their accomplishments, and how well they embody the Sith code.
I'm pretty okay. First of all, I'm pretty sure that is Darth Nihilus, but were they in actually anything aside from the KOTOR games to have so many fucking like art shots?
The things I just outlined. Think about the exact opposite of what makes a good Jedi. No good morals. Completely evil. And don't worry, Vader isn't actually at the bottom of the list. We'll get to him later. Another Sith that...
No, that... Fucking debated. Also, he should definitely be towards the bottom of the list. Technically, he wasn't last. He was second last.
Turned to the light side was Darth Gravid. Luckily, instead of toppling an entire Sith empire like Vader, Gravid only managed to destroy a bunch of Sith artifacts and documents before his apprentice killed him. Similar to Ventress, Savage Opress makes this list because of his training from Dooku, as well as Maul. Some of you may...
Was he ever really like a true Sith, though? Opposed to just, why does this look like it's fucking potato quality? I suppose we'll put on that, but I think it's going to make it better.
May argue that Savage and Ventress don't count because of the rule of two, but the rule of two...
That is what I'm going to bring up. In fairness, if they were being conditioned to be Dooku's apprentice, it would be okay, because in fairness, he would need to find an apprentice strong enough to become his apprentice if he had to kill Darth Sidious. So in fairness, him having an apprentice is kind of okay. That is generally what happens. The person that wants to kill their master, to break the rule of two, finds an apprentice before that, either killing their master or being killed by their master, so that there's always an apprentice and a master dynamic. So that's fine.
Two is just a law, which means it can be broken. It doesn't prevent other people from being Sith outside of the two Bainites. Savage follows...
I suppose that's also fair.
The Sith code as far as I can tell, and he was apprenticed to other Sith, so he counts. However, people like Kylo Ren, Snoke, or the Inquisitors don't count as Sith. They didn't receive much formal training from a Sith master, and they don't follow Sith rituals or practices. They are simply agents for more powerful Sith. The same goes for acolytes. The reason I put Savage here is because he was basically a pawn for his entire life. Just a brute doing the bidding of his masters. Sure.
Cool character, but yeah, in fairness, served in a series that doesn't really exist.
Savage was super powerful in terms of strength, but otherwise he didn't have much going for him. Darth Bandon also didn't have much going for him. I always think of Darth Brandon when I say that. It's funny because both guys are equally retarded. Bandon is Darth Malak's apprentice from Knights of the Old Republic. So in case you were wondering, yes, this video does include every Sith from Legends too. So make sure to stick around to the end to see where your favorite Sith is ranked. In Darth Bandon's first scene, he kills an innocent Sith trooper for no reason. That's just dumb. But then he faces Jedi Revan in a duel. Bandon tells Revan to beg for his life because he stands no chance against him. Of course, Jedi Revan completely destroyed him. That's kind of like Darth Enrage, who exists only to be killed by Darth Nox at some point. Who on earth did they hire to come up with these names? I'll do them one better. How about Darth drop a like on the video? Anyway, next
That was one of the coolest things I've ever heard.
up is a really interesting Sith named Darth Vectivus. Vectivus didn't really care about power or killing Jedi. Instead, he just focused on Sith lore, rituals, and meditation. He had his own personal moral code that he followed, as he ruled and managed a mining facility.
I have no idea who half these people are.
He died of natural causes surrounded by his family and friends. That makes him a major exception compared to most Sith. A nice story, but not very good for a Sith, I'm afraid. Who doesn't want... That's why Darth Venomous fought Darth Plagueis in a
I don't feel like that's the worst thing ever. Homie wanted to basically be like the fucking priest of the Sith Order. I don't feel like that's terrible.
duel to see who would be Tenebrous' apprentice. Venomous lost, and he was kept alive so that Plagueis could experiment on him. In a similar way, Lord Calitho had the
That's a bit fucked. Hardcore, but fucked.
gift of foresight, but it only got clear when he was closer to death. So his Sith comrades had the bright idea to imprison him and constantly starve and torture him, so he was always close to death. That way, the other Sith could know what was coming. I bet they never would have
That
saw
is so fucked up. Hardcore, but fucked up. That's like, and also pretty smart plan in fairness.
this one coming, though. A Sith called Darth Millennial. Again, the names. This guy rejected the Sith under
I have to say, I don't know where these names came from.
the rule of two to make his own dark side religion, where he called himself the Supreme Prophet. Instead, it was more like a cult, and they only existed to kill anyone who didn't believe in their teaching.
I mean, he did raise an entire cult. That has to give some props somewhere. Like, I mean, isn't that everyone's goal to have fucking people worship you and to form like your own cult?
Thankfully, Thankfully,
Cult?
Palpatine, being
Cult?
the benevolent
Cult?
emperor he is, decided to send his inquisitors to wipe out the religion thousands of years later. And next up we have Darth Gen Z, who is addicted to video games and TikTok. Just kidding. Instead,
I mean, probably not wrong.
we get this less entertaining group of Sith from another cult called the Lost Tribe of the Sith. The two Sith that I'm ranking here are called Darish Vol and Sarasu Talon. They're just not powerful and their cult sucks. Right above the Lost Tribe, I'm going to put a bunch of other Sith from the rule of one Sith sect. There's not much known about them, and most are just blindly loyal
These all just random, like, fucking offshoots of what Sith are meant to be.
robots serving Darth Krayt, which isn't a very good trait to have if you're a Sith. A particularly bad Sith from the Rule of One era is Darth Ruin. He lets his apprentice kill him because he thinks it'll help her be more powerful. That apprentice is the next Sith on our list, Darth Talon.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that, first of all, Jesus, what is she wearing? Second of all, in theory, that's literally, yeah, pretty much against Sith code. You always want to be the strongest.
I know a lot of you have heard about her. Probably for nothing she did as a Sith, if you get what I mean. Unfortunately, good looks
I have so many questions about what the fuck was just happening in that scene.
don't make you a good Sith. She's super loyal to Darth Krayt and seemingly has no personal ambitions or thoughts of her own. She even fails repeatedly in her first missions for Krayt, so I guess there's only one reason he kept her around. The only Sith I can find
I mean, can you blame him?
from this era that actually tried to overthrow Krayt was Darth Weirlock III. Weirlock essentially kills Krayt after he was injured in battle. Weirlock takes over the Sith Empire only for Krayt to be resurrected. See, this is wwhy I hate the Legacy era. Anyway, getting back to the good old days, we have Darth Shaw. We don't know anything about her except that she found Darth Maulman
And then she's like a cool Sub-Zero Scorpion-esque outfit, which raises her cool points, so she's high up on the list.
and trained him only for Maulman to kill her, which gives me the perfect transition to talk about Darth Maulman himself. This guy is weird. He said this
Well, half the point of the Sith was to raise another Sith strong enough to overthrow them and overpower them. That was kind of a lot of the point of the rule of two was you took on an apprentice that one day would be strong enough to kill you, and that was your goal, to make them strong enough either to turn you to kill you primarily. If they managed to kill you, would create therefore a stronger and stronger Sith order, as only the strongest will survive, and over and over and over impart more knowledge, more skill, more knowledge, more skill, more knowledge, more skill, and they get stronger and stronger and stronger, eventually leaving only like the elitist or the strongest of people that would be Siths left.
sadistic, probably mentally ill, and just generally deranged, and that's putting it lightly. He was a self-proclaimed artist. As a small child, he killed his family's cat and made a sculpture out of its bones, flesh, and organs. Naturally, like all good parents do, they
Yeah, I'm not sure that's so safe, eh? He might have had some issues you need to discuss with someone a lot more professional.
sent him to a mental asylum. That's where Shaw freed him once she found out he was force sensitive. If only she knew. Later on in life, for his
What is that from?
next art piece, he made a super weapon which would destroy a city, but he wanted to freeze time with the Force so that the citizens of that city would permanently experience the climax right before death, eternally enduring the worst possible emotions. For once, the Jedi saw what was happening and took action. They stopped Momin and killed him before he could launch the weapon. His spirit inhabited a new body that
That's a bit fucked. Like, that is definitely evil. Like, I'm a twisted serial killer with a lot of problems, now became a Sith and have superpowers vibes.
met Vader, and Momin personally designed Vader's fortress on Mustafar. Finally, Vader put an end to him for good after Momin basically made fun of Vader for losing Padme. So after all of that, Momin is the only person I've ever heard of who has the title of Dark Side Sculptor. If Disney needs help making a compelling new villain, they should just make another one of those guys. The Stranger? Nah, more like the Sculptor. Next up, we've got a series of Sith that we just
I don't know what the fuck that joke was.
don't know much about. First is Darth Anedu. He's the first Sith known to take the name of Darth. He was extremely powerful in Sith sorcery and things like that, but for some reason he just became super paranoid and scared of other Sith, thinking they were out to get him. It got so bad that he actually went into hiding and eventually entombed himself, where he died. Next is Darth
Isn't Darth Undeadu supposed to be the one that learns how to become immortal? I'm pretty sure that's the Darth Undeadu. I'm pretty sure that's his story. Well, I don't know, story might be an excessive term. But he was the Sith that learned how to harness the power of immortality. I'm so sure that was the thing. And that was even the holocron that Darth Revan was hunting. To make himself immortal.
Scotia. He's a cybernetically enhanced Sith who was supposed to be pretty powerful, but he was extremely arrogant and overconfident in his enhancement. A Sith acolyte managed to disable his enhancements and wiped the floor with him. Darth Sanguis went to Exegol to achieve immortality, but was turned into an animal while performing a ritual. Luckily, another Sith
Fuck. So in terms of rituals gone bad, stakes are pretty hard, just saying.
called Dark Noctis came along. Supposedly, she had the power to take the galaxy, but she wanted to save that for later and become immortal first. Seems smart, right?
I mean, in fairness, don't blame her.
Guess she wasn't very smart after all, because Sanguis tricks her into becoming an animal too. Sanguis died, but he was freed from the curse. Noctis also had a curved lightsaber blade, but I can't help that she's just fighting with a candy cane. Remember Darth Gravid, who was at the bottom of the list? His apprentice Darth Jean is the one who killed her. As Gravid's apprentice, she could have easily gone along with his plan for destroying the Sith's progress in the Rule of Two, but she showed her dedication to the dark side by taking him out and preserving Darth Bane's legacy. Other than that, we don't know anything else about her. Just like Darth Tanis, she's credited with building this pyramid and a super weapon that's seen in Rebels. Darth Vindican is the master of Darth Malgus. He gets destroyed by a Jedi in the duel, but Malgus comes in and saves the day.
Why does that name sound so familiar?
Malgus, being the good Sith he is, takes this opportunity to kill his master. Darth Icarol is the one who initially discovered Malgus, though. He got recognition from Emperor Vitiate himself for being an outstanding Sith, whatever that's worth. The fact that Vitiate bothered to notice Icarol is actually pretty impressive, because for most of his reign, he had a lesser group of Sith called the Dark Council, who did a lot of the busy work of ruling the Empire for him. I think the worst of all of these Dark Council members is Darth Thanaton.
So I guess these are all Knights of the Old Republic MMO people.
He basically gets destroyed on so many occasions by Darth Nox that another Dark Council member, Darth Mortis, broke his neck. Thanaton was obsessed with the rules and an extremely overbearing loyalist to Vitiate, and this highlights the problem that I have with the Dark Council. As Sith, they shouldn't have been content with just lording over their little spheres of the Empire. I mean, what good Sith
Is that the player character?
is fine with just existing as head of logistics and production for hundreds of years?
Well, one that earns a nice fat salary and doesn't have to do much work. I mean, at the end of the day, I want to live a cushy life.
If you know The Office, this feels like Dwight being the assistant to the assistant of the regional manager. You know what I mean? Obviously, these Sith were powerful in their own right, but like I said, this list is not about who's the strongest. And for the vast majority of these Sith, we know nothing about them except a name drop every once in a while. In total, across the thousands of years of Vitiate's reign, I found about 35 Dark Council members in total. In no particular order, here's 30th. There's a few other Dark Council members I'll mention later on, but Darth Locust stands out as one of the few Council members who showed enough drive and ambition to attempt to overthrow Vitiate. Locust
Also used
the
a
other 11 Dark
blue lightsaber?
Council members and went to Vitiate's citadel. They
That's definitely Knights of the Old Republic stuff. Those fucking videos go so hard. Their fucking cutscenes and their promo videos and their trailers are some of the best shit ever. If only the game lived up to them. Fairness, never really given the game that much of a chance aside from playing the story for a bit, which is entertaining. But in terms of actual MMO vibes, don't know.
Arrived on Vitiate's front doorstep, only to be vaporized by a bright light, which we can only assume is Vitiate's pure power. Vitiate left Locust alive though, and made sure to torture her to death for good measure. Next, we have two Sith that are featured in training simulations for Starkiller in the Force Unleashed game, Darth Phobos and Darth Desolus. Darth Desolus was a Jedi turned Sith from Utapau. He hated the Jedi so much that he recruited and trained his own army to fight them. Desolus and his army managed to take out 2,000 Jedi before they were baited and
Jesus, okay. I mean, they did a good job. No one can argue the fact that they did not do a good job. That is pretty hectic.
completely wiped out in a finesse move from the Jedi, which makes Desolus way cooler than Phobos. Phobos went on a rampage, killing a ton of Sith in an attempt to take over. Eventually, she was forced into hiding, where guess what? She decided it'd be a good idea to start a cult of her own. What makes her cult better?
What's with the fucking Sith and cults? Also, nothing against that. I mean, everyone wants to have their own cult. Or, you know, preferably call it a religion and become tax-free instead of just throwing the word cult around. That seems a bit excessive.
Than anything I've ever mentioned before is that they became so dangerous that the Jedi and the Sith teamed up to take her out. So she must have been doing a pretty good job. Okay, and now that we're through with all of those random Sith, I can finally talk more about Vader. I have to give credit where credit is due. Vader is a terrible person. He killed the younglings, destroyed the Jedi Temple, and hunted down some of the last remaining Jedi. That's a great set of accomplishments for any Sith. But, like I said earlier, he was stuck essentially being Sidious's errand boy. And in the end, he did turn to the light side. So there's no way I can put Vader any higher than right here on this list.
I would have left him actually where apparently the debate was. He fucking destroyed the whole thing we're talking about.
Now, back to the Legacy era, we've got the Dark Lady Lumaya. For some of you, this ranking may seem a bit low. After all, Lumaya was important for trying to keep the Sith alive after the fall of the Galactic Empire. However, it's very unclear how powerful she is, given that the power scaling with this era is completely absurd. Sure, she faces Luke, who is the strongest Jedi of all time in Legends, but I'm inclined to think that doesn't
He was also one of the only fucking Jedi.
Matter all that much. Other than turning Jacen Solo to the dark side, she doesn't really accomplish much either, at least in my opinion, so that's why she's here. Next is Ludo Kresh, who competed with Naga Sadao for control of the Sith.
So they were the OG people. So I mean, This is my thing is, some of the OG Sith they built. Okay, well, first of all, he's an actual fucking Sith. Sith also being a race in Star Wars, not just a religion, I don't know, whatever the fuck you want to call whatever they were. And if I'm not mistaken, also considered to found what is considered to be like the Sith Order.
Empire. Ludo Kresh wasn't interested in war and potential expansion for the Empire. Naga Sadao was the complete opposite. Eventually, things reached a boiling point, and Ludo Kresh lost to Naga Sadao in a 1v1 for control of the Empire. In this instance, I would say that Ludo Kresh isn't really acting as a Sith should by not seeking out war. However, based on the results of the Great Hyperspace War, it looks like he was right. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know if Ludo Kresh was just making the correct tactical decision, or if he just wasn't as evil or power-hungry as Naga Sadao. If you think you know the answer, let me know in the comments. But because of their 1v1, by default, I've got to put Naga Sadao higher, despite all the
Yeah, well, he
damage
won.
did to the
Winners are higher. Winners be better.
Empire. Luckily, Naga Sadao didn't rule for long after his failure, because his apprentice Frida Nad killed him and became the most powerful Sith in the galaxy at that time. He ruled the planet of Onderon, which is Saw Gerrera's planet, by the way. Eventually, some Jedi came along and killed Frida Nad. Another man that had a significant part in bringing about the new Sith is none other than Lord Tyrannus. I'm really not sure where to put Dooku.
I don't know. Lord Tyrannus is. I'm not going to comment on where to put him. I was going to comment on the fact that fucking Count Dooku still sounds so much better than Lord Tyrannus. Count Dooku is a dope name. He should change it.
As objective as I'd like to be, I have to admit that some of these rankings higher up on the list are going to be more subjective. If you disagree with me, feel free to tell me why. But Dooku is definitely one of the most iconic Sith of all time. His cool
I agree.
lightsaber hilt, generational dueling skills, you name it. But at least from my perspective, Tyrannus is kind of an underachiever as a Sith. By the end of his life, we can see that he was really just a pawn in Sidious's game. The moment Sidious had no further use for him, Dooku was taken out. And thus, Dooku didn't really accomplish much on his own. He was just a puppet, not all that dissimilar to Snoke if you really think about it. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but that's why I can't rank Dooku any higher than right here.
I think that's also fair, but see, it's something I spoke about yesterday when we spoke about Count Dooku. Because yes, previously fallen Jedi, hence blue lightsaber originally, blah, 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 that whole story. He was someone that changed so dramatically in terms of his ideology to become from Jedi to Sith to becoming the person that serves as the Emperor's apprentice. So he made a massive ideological shift and was one that clearly believed in what the Emperor was doing and wants to help the Emperor. He even stayed in the Jedi Order for a lot of the time, and he helped, like, acted as a double agent, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I'm not really going into the massive rant that I did yesterday, or discussion that I did yesterday about this, but basically my whole thing of to make that entire ideological shift, to be as convinced as he was to serve in the dark side, to serve the Emperor, to help the Emperor in his goals, would he not have maybe willingly lost to Anakin to become the catalyst for him becoming Darth Vader that was seen in the Emperor's plans? Because he's clearly being manipulated for most of the Revenge of the Sith, he being Anakin in this case, into turning to the dark side. If he saw that, which he clearly saw, that there was the inkling of him turning into the dark side, this being Palpatine, would he have not have asked Dooku to do this for him, to lose to Anakin, to allow him to be the catalyst to start or to destroy the Republic, to destroy the Jedi Order, and him allowing for it? If that bullshit crazy fan theory is true, he deserves to be much higher on this list.
For example, Marco Ragnos ruled the Sith Empire at the very end of its golden age. This was the last period of Sith power and expansion right before
Also a real Sith.
Naga Sadao ruined everything. He was known as the most powerful Dark Lord of his era, and he was the one who originally discovered Vitiate and gave him power, which is obviously extremely important for the Sith Empire down the road. Darth Cognis could quite literally see down the road.
Darth Cognis, so this is Revan's apprentice's apprentice. She was an assassin that could see into the future, or no, she could. I don't know if it could see into the future, or could her dreams would give her information, kind of thing.
As she possessed special precognitive abilities, being able to see clear pictures and visions of future events. She was trained by the legendary Darth Bane himself, as well as Darth Zanuck.
She wasn't really trained by Bane. I could be getting that wrong, but I'm pretty sure she wasn't really trained by Bane. Zanuck was his apprentice. He took Darth Cognis saved Bane. So he took her on, and not long after, I think before really managing to train her at all, Xana and him have their showdown. Xana wins and Darth Cognus becomes her apprentice.
So many of their secrets and abilities were passed down to Cognus. She also called a major W when she decided to banish Darth Millennial from the Sith because of his heretical beliefs. So we were spared from Darth Gen Z because of Cognus, probably. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. Next is a real wildcard. Some wouldn't consider him a Sith, but I can't make a video ranking Sith without Starkiller.
Ooh, this is interesting. Because this leads to, I don't actually know what the canon ending of the games is. Because you can choose the dark side ending, which means you swage from the dark to the light to go back to the dark. I think in both games you can pick dark side endings. But I'm not sure what would be regarded as canon. To say what decision was supposed to have been made or considered to have been made.
Sure, he never got the formal title of Darth, and he broke the rule of two. But as I've said before...
Once again, I would say he didn't break the rule of two. Because the rule of two assumes that if you're trying to... Starkiller's whole story was he was being trained by Vader to kill the Emperor. If he's killing the Emperor or being used in, I don't know, Darth Vader's attempt to kill the Emperor and take his place, then it would be fine. Which that was his whole story. And the whole thing of the rule of two was the apprentice found an apprentice so that whoever won the clash based on whatever, or, well, not necessarily even clash, whoever survived between them and the master would become the master and then have a new apprentice to train. So, not technically breaking the rule of two, because the intention was he would be used in Vader's attempt to overthrow Palpatine, and if Vader lost, Starkiller would become then Sidious's new apprentice. So technically not against the rule of two, or not breaking the rule of two. That's what I was trying to think of.
I believe you can still have Sith outside of the rule of two, and he was considered the Dark Lord Vader's apprentice, so he did receive training from a Sith.
Vader's apprentice, not Palpatine's apprentice. Big distinction.
To be fair, for the majority of his life, he was just Vader's tool, and Starkiller lacks any true motivations that a good Sith needs. Anyway, because Starkiller is such an anomaly, consider this ranking an honorable mention more than anything. You'll have to tell me your thoughts on him in the comments. But speaking of anomalies, I can't go without mentioning Darth Sion. Sion's body was cut apart in battle, but rather
Also Kotar too.
than die like a normal person, Sion channeled as much anger as he could to will himself to live. His sheer hatred and power in the dark side forced his body to stay together, keeping him alive. Unfortunately, for most of his life, Sion served under other Sith in the Empire before becoming part of the Triumvirate, and as we found out at the end of his life, his method of keeping himself alive was just a state of weakness and dependency. While he could technically be immortal, he always had to live with immense pain, focusing all of his willpower on holding his body together.
Why do I feel like that living in immense pain is just like a, when you sign up to the dark side, live in immense pain?
A unique Sith for sure, but far from being one of the best. Our next Sith has something in common with Sion, that being the use of hatred to keep himself alive.
Ah,
that
Malak.
Sith is Darth Maul. Maul is
Okay, never mind. There was a picture of Darth Malak, just saying, and we haven't seen Malak yet. Also, we haven't seen Revan. And I don't know if Revan count... What does Revan count as? We still have Nihilus, Revan. Obviously, okay, Palpatine's probably going to be number one. We haven't seen Bane. We haven't seen Darth Xana. Still quite a few that should be quite high up. Palpatine Master as well, can't think of his name. But yeah.
considered to be one of the best Sith of all time in terms of strength and durability. His brutal and aggressive lightsaber style made him one of the best fighters among the Sith as well. Maul was extremely ambitious, and he was constantly plotting for new ways to gain power. He would get what he wanted by any means.
I mean, he was power-obsessed, fair, and also dope.
Be that revenge, power, or control. He was truly in tune with his passions, which is exceptional for a Sith. Unfortunately, Maul was doomed to failure for most of his life. He consistently gets owned by Sidious or Obi-Wan, preventing him from achieving his goals. Ultimately, Maul will always be a story of unfulfilled potential. The same can be said for Darth Caedus, who could have easily been the most powerful Sith of all time. However,
Nothing wrong with their arm there.
For starters, he was only a Sith for about a year's time, so he simply didn't have long to grow in the dark side. Because of that, he also didn't have much time to accomplish anything as a Sith. His main goal seemed to have been to be a sacrifice for the galaxy, to prevent his visions of a Sith ruling the galaxy from coming to fruition. This is what makes me think Kaitis wasn't fully committed to the dark side. Granted, the writing in the books that cover his life are inconsistent at best, so I might be interpreting things wrong. But
I mean,
to me,
that is phase. A lot of it's extended universe stuff. Not extended universe stuff, but Legends, legacy stuff after fucking the reestablishment of the Jedi Order and Mara Jade, Skywalker, and whatever. Because I think that's who that is. I could be wrong.
It seems like he was deceived by the Dark Lady Lumaya more than anything.
I think that's who had the purple lightsaber.
Today, partially due to a lack of dueling skill, he died at the hands of his sister and Luke Skywalker. The story of Kaitis may be one of the biggest unfulfilled potential examples ever. Unlike Kaitis, Darth Zana made sure to fulfill her potential. She was Darth Bane's apprentice. Like any good Sith does, she knew she had to kill her master. Unfortunately for her, Bane had special armor that was nearly impenetrable, so she decided to visit the Jedi Temple on Coruscant and search the Jedi archives for her answer. She was able to accomplish this mission by directly disguising her Force aura as a light side and directly manipulating the Jedi around her. Sometime later, she fought Darth Bane himself in an epic duel. While Zana had Bane on the ropes, Bane tried to transfer his spirit into Zana's body. Her power in sorcery prevented this, and she finished off Bane once and for all. While she prevented Bane from controlling her, she allowed some of Bane's essence to be imprinted onto herself, which only made her more powerful. From there, she would continue Bane's legacy by training Cognis and preserving the Sith for the future. Nearly
I know I've spoken about this before, but there's a book series. I think it's a trilogy. Star Wars trilogy, obviously. But about Darth Bane and by extension Zana and Cognis. I think it's about Drew Capuchin. Trying to see if I can find a fucking picture now. Sorry, chat. Drew Capuchin. I'll just quickly pop it up. This series of books. I'm not sure if this is the first one, second one, or third one. Can't remember what order they come in, but you can look it up. I think Path of Destruction is the first one. Could be wrong with that. Fucking dope book series. I will say someone that is a bit obsessed with Star Wars lore. The writer, the novelist, does a fucking good job of actually doing research and making it feel like it takes place in the actual Star Wars universe. So I would definitely check that out. Also, the audiobooks. Also pretty good audiobooks in my opinion. Read really well and voice acted really well. There is places on the internet where if you Google it, you can find them for free. Otherwise, there's Audible if you want to pay for that. Yeah, that's if you really like Star Wars. Pick those books up if you're a reader. If you're not, fucking try out the audio books. Really dope, really well written. And that same author has done, I think he does a lot of the Old Republic novels. I'm busy with the Darth Revan one. Also, so far, really good. So shout out to those.
1,000 years later, this would allow
Or Revan, not necessarily Darth Revan.
for Darth Tenebris to come along, who is most famous for being
This is Palpatine's master, if I'm not mistaken.
the master of Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Darth Plagueis is Palpatine's master.
Tenebris was a bit
Probably still not, but fucking definitely someone on yours has to be Darth Palpatine's master. Darth Sidious's master.
Sith, or a Bith Lord, whatever you want to call it. Not only was he vitally important for being Plagueis' master, but he was also a scientist, and a Sith who was obsessed with gathering new information. Remember Darth Venomous? Tenebris used them to personally conduct experiments to learn more about the Force.
So Homie was a bit fucked up mentally, which explains why he's such a good Sith. Also probably why we like the Sith, but let's not get into that because then we have to start doing introspective rant, and no, I'm not good with that right now.
He also sought out connections
Or ever.
with organizations like the Trade Federation and the Banking Clan to spread the Sith's influence. Even then, Tenebris was pulling strings behind the scenes in the Senate and on Coruscant. This would lay the groundwork for Sidious to take the reins later on. While on a mission to a mining planet, Tenebris and Plagueis were betrayed by their allies. Plagueis took this opportunity to kill his master. Interestingly enough, Plagueis chose to investigate the people who betrayed them, which led him down a rabbit hole all the way to Naboo, where he would discover a young boy named Sheev Palpatine. So in more ways than one, Darth
Okay, Palpatine was from Naboo. I'll take that back.
Tenebrous deserves a lot of credit as the catalyst in the resurgence of the Sith Empire under Sidious. Sidious' empire nearly completely wiped out the Jedi. The closest the Jedi came to being wiped out before that was probably during the era of the Sith Triumvirate, which was led by Darth Traya. Formerly known as Kreia, Darth Traya had some really special force powers. She wielded 3 lightsabers at once through telekinesis, making her an
Fucking annoying boss fight, just saying.
extremely dangerous opponent. She was also able to strip her enemies of the Force entirely. One of her ultimate goals was to destroy the Force itself. The beginning stages of her plan involved a war with the Jedi, which resulted in the first Jedi Purge. I think her desire to destroy the Force is actually a really good idea, and I'm surprised more Sith didn't think this way. She thought that the Force didn't give individuals enough control over their own lives, and as such she wanted to eliminate all Force users. In line with the Sith Code, this seems like a totally reasonable goal. The Force was the thing keeping her in chains.
Reasonable is a bit of a stretch there in terms of what we want to say about her.
Before she could really enact her plan to its full potential, though, she was eliminated by the Jedi Exile, who was a wound in the Force. Think about a light side version of Nihilus, who's coming up very soon, by the way. But before we get to Nihilus, we have to talk about a few more Siths first, like Darth Jadis. Not much is known about Jadis.
I'm very curious if Revan is on this list.
But he was widely known as the most powerful Sith in the Empire, second only to Vitiate. Vitiate himself even declared Jadis as the best Sith the Empire had ever produced. And considering Vitiate ruled for thousands of years, this means a lot. Jadis presided over the Dark Council. As such, he had great personal power and also an immense power base, maybe even greater than that of Vitiate. Jadis was also known as a brilliant tactician. He preferred to pull the strings from behind the scenes, making calculated power moves to get what he wanted. There's not much more I can say about Jadis, but anyone that gets personally recognized by Vitiate deserves a high spot on this list. Later on in his career, Jadis disappeared outside of the galaxy, never to be seen again. There was still some evidence that he had agents doing his bidding in the galaxy, but no one knows for sure. Ironically, that part of Jadis' story is very similar to another Sith who was on the Dark Council named Darth Nox. Nox killed the incumbent council member Darth Thanaton.
Why does it really look like a player character? I could be completely wrong about this.
To get her seat on the council. She was known to be powerful in pretty much every Sith power, and she has the unique ability to absorb other Sith spirits, killing
Okay, well, probably not with a power like that wouldn't character, but really looks like a fucking player character in this game.
their essence but gaining their power. This easily makes her one of the most powerful Sith ever, and to my knowledge, most power scaling would support this. Essentially, she also shared control of the Sith Empire with Darth Maul, who is the next Sith on my list. During Vitiate's absence, Maul was the de facto leader of the Empire through his leadership role on the Dark Council. He presided over the Sphere of Defense and had a lifetime of military experience from war with the Republic. Despite all of that experience, Maul couldn't handle Revan's attempts to resurrect the Emperor, which caused Mar's death and Nox's disappearance.
The original Emperor, that's what I was referring to. I don't know what I'm going to say Enforcer, but that's the guy that you see in all the fucking stories in Knights of the Old Republic, the MMO, that's like, oh, he's the strongest thing ever.
Speaking of Revan,
That was in another video we watched.
our next Sith is Darth Malak, who was Revan's second in command. Revan and Malak were formerly Jedi who fell to the dark side together. They formed their own splinter Sith Empire of sorts, and even took the Star Forge, which gave them considerable power. Malak tried to overthrow Revan on multiple occasions, one of which was a duel, where Revan chopped off Malak's jaw. This is why Malak wears his iconic metal prosthetic jaw. The second time around, Malak was actually successful, defeating Revan's flagship with his own. From that point on, Malak controlled the Sith Empire and the Star Forge for himself. While Malak
Wasn't that when Revan fell, though? And the Jedi found him and they stripped his memory? That whole fucking plot of the entire game?
was extremely powerful in his own right, Revan ended up owning him again, this time as a Jedi. Logically then,
Oh, okay,
Revan
there we
is
go.
going to be next on my list above Malak.
As a Jedi, but he's going to be next on the list of Sith.
At the 11th spot on this list, Revan was an excellent military leader and strategist, probably the best ever among the Sith. He was obsessed with gaining knowledge, not all that dissimilar to Tenebrous like I mentioned earlier. The key difference between the two is that Revan was also an exceptional fighter and duelist. Remember how I said Malak attacked Revan's flagship? Well, that only worked because Revan was in the process of fighting 6 Jedi at once, who were trying to capture him. And these Jedi weren't pushovers either. They could be considered some of the best in the Order at that time. I know there's a lot of bloodthirsty Revan fans out there that are gonna think the 11th spot is way too low for him, but
Well, he went to the light side. I'm pretty sure that's the opposite of the epitome of what the best Sith is.
trust me, there are actually 10 more Sith that are just better than him, in power and in dedication.
Well, okay, Darth Bane. And Darth Sidious, I know still 2 of them. The official Emperor, whatever the fuck, the dude in the hologram thing.
So to kick off
The issues as well, a lot of the Darths and a lot of the extended universe and, well, now legend stuff, not extended universe. I don't know if they really count as Sith or not, like that exist in this
off the
list.
top 10, I've got Darth Plagueis. Plagueis is
Okay,
easily
well,
one of
we knew Plagueis. Okay, fuck, I forgot about Plagueis.
the most powerful Sith of all time, on account of the knowledge he learned for himself and gleaned from Tenebris. Plagueis had the special power and initiative to cloud the Jedi's foresight and flood the galaxy with dark side aura, which paved the way for the confused and complacent Jedi Sidious would face later on. Speaking of which, I have to give credit where credit is due. Plagueis essentially trained the best Sith of all time in Sidious.
Okay, so in fairness, I don't think anyone would have been surprised if Sidious was. I think would have been surprised if Sidious wasn't number one. That's a kind of thing that spoiler kind of fair enough.
It's definitely worth noting, since any student is only as good as their master, and Plagueis was definitely strong in his own right. If you buy into the idea that the Sith got stronger with each new iteration within the Rule of Two, Plagueis was one of the most powerful Sith of all time. And while he was a talented fighter as well, I think he'd probably
Oh, we also don't have Exar Kun. I don't know if that technically would count as Sith.
lose in a 1v1 with our next Sith, Darth Malgus. To say Malgus is an impressive fighter would be an understatement. He was absurdly powerful with brute force, enhanced
I forgot about him.
by his strength in the Force. This, coupled with his legendary dueling skills, made him nearly impossible to defeat.
And his fake Vader armor. Don't forget the fake Vader armor.
He and his master, Vindican, took back the Sith world of Korriban, which was very important for the Sith and their heritage. And like any good Sith does, Malgus eventually betrayed and successfully killed his master. Now, as leader of the Sith Empire, Malgus had his crowning achievement, the sacking of Coruscant. He personally took the Jedi Temple while his forces took the Galactic Senate, forcing the Republic to sign treaties that were extremely beneficial to the Sith Empire. Successfully striking at the heart of the Republic is something very few Sith have ever accomplished, and that fact alone grants Malgus a lot of clout and influence among the Sith, and on my list. One of the other rare times the Sith successfully attacked Coruscant was under Exar Kun's rule, and he's the 8th best Sith.
Okay, there we go. We did get Exar Kun.
Raw power, Exar Kun rivals even that of Sidious. He's also one of the first known Sith to ever use a double-bladed lightsaber, a technique which he mastered and made him arguably the best Sith duelist of all time. Kun was an avid learner of forbidden force abilities. For example, he had the ability to twist Jedi's minds with magic, turning them on their masters and comrades. The biggest proof of his power is in his spirit. Typically, spirits are much weaker than their living counterparts. Even so, in spirit, Exar Kun gave Grandmaster Luke Skywalker a lot of trouble. It took Luke plus a dozen Jedi to finish him off. It was also noted
Well, I don't think Exar Kun was before Luke's era.
that Exar Kun's spirit was a threat to the entire galaxy. If we're talking about threats to the entire galaxy, then we have to talk about Darth Nihilus. When you earn the title of
We spoke about it like 4 fucking times and forgot she existed.
Devourer of Worlds for yourself, you know you've made it. To be honest with you guys, I had a really hard time choosing where to put Nihilus. This is because of the state of his existence as
The fucking OP force ability.
a wound in the Force. You see, in order to survive, Nihilus was forced to consume and devour entire planets and populaces to feed his need for Force energy. The thing is, though, this craving was insatiable, and it only grew with time, which left Nihilus chained to his affliction. At one point, he even lost his physical body from the affliction, which essentially left him as a primitive spirit with no direction. So on one hand, I think Nihilus didn't have much in the way of free will, with no way to break his chains,
I mean, that is actually fair.
as the code says. But he's such an absurd enigma that I think he deserves to be up here. His ability to use force drain on his opponents at such a massive scale is something that no one has ever replicated. So what do you think? Does Nihilus' insatiable desires represent the best things about a Sith, such as giving in to passion? Or does his limitations earn him a lower spot on his list? Let me know in the comments. While Nihilus was all about destruction, Darth Bane was all about preservation. Without him, the Sith might have ceased to exist. During the start of the Jedi's Golden Age, the Sith were in trouble. The solution? Go into hiding. After all, the sheer proliferation of
So now, okay, now we're running out of, okay, apart from Darth Sidious being number 1, now we're running out of Sith that we actually know. And we've covered all the movies. Trying to think of people that were in the fucking games. Or at least very relevant in extended universe stuff. All the fucking temples you raid in KOTOR 1 and 2 and shit like that on Korriban, I think obviously qualify, I would assume. But I can't think of the names to save my life right now.
Sith had led to a lot of infighting, and some Sith were just weak. These factors and more were leading to their downfall time and time.
Also, Darth Bane, dope character.
Time again. By limiting the amount of Sith to 2, the Sith could grow in power with every new generation, until they would be unstoppable. Darth Bane accomplished this by systematically eliminating the Sith
Hey, there's the cover of the book I was speaking about.
factions he considered a nuisance, a powerful act in and of itself. Some people consider this a flaw of Bane's, to restrict the amount of Sith in existence, but we can clearly see from its result that he had the right idea. Because of that, I think Bane has the best case to be the prophesied Sith.
And he almost like eradicates the whole fucking Sith Order to kind of accomplish this.
The Sith who would rise up and achieve the Sith's goals. Whatever you think of Bane, you have to admit that he was an extremely influential person and a truly dedicated Sith. He didn't lack a desire for power, but he had the patience and foresight to wait until the right time. But more importantly, we're moving on into the top 5, and I think you're going to have a hard time arguing with any of these picks. To start us off, in 5th place is Darth Krayt. He's the leader of the Rule of One Sith
Yeah,
that came about
we
after
forgot about that one.
the death of Sidious. You could argue that he's the most powerful Sith of all time, when comparing Krayt to Grandmaster Luke Skywalker, who is easily the best Jedi of all time in Legends. Over the course of Krayt's 200 years in the galaxy, he did a lot. He was personally trained by the spirit of one of the first Sith Lords ever, which makes Krayt a second-generation Sith if you really think about it. As such, he possessed some of the most unique Force abilities ever. He had also received never-seen-before bio-enhancements from the Yuuzhan Vong, a species from outside the galaxy that
There's the whole rule of one. There was only, should only be one Sith, but the homie had a fucking fleet of like apprentices and
had access to many powers some would consider unnatural. As far as accomplishments go, well, he single-handedly resurrected the Sith Order in his image. Krayt took Coruscant, which, like I said, is a big deal in the cycle of events in Star Wars. Unlike his predecessors, he actually decided to do the biggest middle finger to the Jedi and restart the Sith Temple there, right on the Jedi's home turf. With all that in mind, you might be wondering how on earth there's 4 Sith that are better than Krayt. Just trust me here. Let me tell you about Tulak Hord, one of the most legendary ancient Sith. In relation to Tulak Hord, Darth Traya says this: if you were to face an ancient Sith Lord in combat, you would learn that we are as children playing with toys compared to the prowess of the old masters. And you've got to remember, Traya was a part of the Sith Triumvirate, and she was a force in her own right. But even she had to admit that the Sith of her era, such as Sion and Nihilus, paled in comparison to the ancients of the old Sith Empire. Tulak Hord might have
like that's in contrast to so much of the power scaling that takes place that all the previous Sith were weaker and everything became stronger with age, not the other way around.
had the strongest telekinetic powers ever. He could easily pull enormous ships out of their path. Once, he even caused a ship the size of a rebel corvette to come out of orbit and crash to the surface. It was told that he was completely undefeated in lightsaber combat too. Supposedly, he single-handedly killed 1,000 Jedi in one battle. While Exar Kun was a problem for his time, Hord is probably the undisputed GOAT at lightsaber skills. If you thought those feats were great, think again. Emperor Vitiate has something to say. Either direct
This is the motherfucker I was thinking about. That still leaves. That was there's still 3 left.
or indirectly behind the scenes, Vitiate ruled the galaxy with an iron fist for 1,500 years. To my knowledge, he's the only other Sith besides Nihilus who could devour entire worlds, which Vitiate did on a select occasion. Despite all of the legendary Sith that lived throughout his reign, Vitiate remained dominant, his rule never questioned or disputed. Some even consider him to be the most perfect, literal embodiment of the dark side, earning him the title the Immortal God. Except, sorry Vitiate, but Sidious actually does that better. Vitiate can barely
What? Okay, Sidious isn't one. Okay, I'm very, very curious now. Is going to be the guy, oh, this is the person who founded the Sith, so therefore they must embody the perfect principles of the Sith.
duel with the lightsaber. After all, he didn't really need to. However, Sidious enjoyed galactic dominance just like Vitiate, but Sidious was an amazing duelist, mastering nearly all of the lightsaber forms.
You want to say, just because we never saw it doesn't mean he couldn't. I mean, he did fight Yoda from all the shit we're seeing. Fought Yoda, fought Mace Windu.
Sidious finally accomplished
Also somehow became kind of immortal, just putting it out there.
Bane's vision for the rule of 2. The Sith Empire was reborn under him, and the Jedi were almost completely destroyed after thousands of years. During Sidious's existence, he also dominated the Force and any other known Force users, namely Vader. In my mind, this is exactly what a Sith should do. And we have to remember that George Lucas and numerous comic books and other EU material reference Sidious as the best and most powerful Sith ever. I'd be an idiot if I didn't take that into
But he's not number 1.
consideration, but you probably noticed that Sidious is only number 2 on the list. There's actually an ancient Sith that most people forget about, who is easily more powerful than Sidious, Vitiate, you fill in the blank, whoever, they're better. Throughout the Star Wars timeline, he was pulling the strings. He takes many forms, but he's best known as Darth Jar Jar. Guess what? Misa going to hurt you, son.
Motherfucker, really?
If you don't like and subscribe. Have you ever thought about who the
Has the 2 debates in one video. That was a pretty cool video. Actually really interesting. There's a lot of people that fucking know. Also a lot of people we did know. Interesting vibe. Yeah, really good video. It's by Master Eli. We watched some of his stuff before. I'll link the video down in the description below. I'll also link in the chat for you guys to go take a look. Yeah, pretty cool video, pretty interesting. Now we're gonna do some other stuff.